Just hear those sleigh bells jingling, ching, ching, chingling too. Come on, it's lovely weather for a sleigh ride together with you.
Hey, Doug. I see you're feeling the holiday spirit.
Darn right I am. It's my favorite time of the year.
Now, I know you're feeling festive, but isn't it a little bit early to start celebrating the holidays?
Silly John, I'm not psyched about Christmas. It's November that's so exciting. That magical time of year when big box retailers whip up consumer FOMO in an insane buying frenzy that ends with people murdering each other in the aisles of Walmart.
Oh, I see.
I've got some great ideas for this year at our store. I was watching Running Man last night and thinking death laser obstacle course meets monkey knife fight for our theme. And that's all before you get in the door.
Douglas, as fun as that all sounds, why wouldn't people just hop on bitteresters.com for all their Black Friday shopping needs? We've got all your usual beer-related paraphernalia, kombucha, kimchi, and winemaking kits, plus gift ideas for brewers and beer lovers as well. And, of course, gift certificates for both our brew on premises and classes.
I guess they could do that, but it seems less, psychotic. Besides, what are we going to do with this crate of flesh-eating spiders?
What crate? You mean this empty box over here? Ah! Flesh-eating spiders not included.
BitterandEsters.com.
Welcome to See What You Can Brew, the podcast about homebrewing, community, and everything beer in New York City.
Brought to you by Bitter Esters in Brooklyn, New York. We're your hosts, Douglas Amport.
And John LaPola.
So I'm so glad today is Tuesday. I am totally wiped out from the weekend. Between middle school tours and beer events, I don't really get a break. Where were you this weekend, John?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Douglas. I was officiating a wedding at two of our best friends.
Oh, yeah.
Of two of our best friends.
I was there.
I was officiating a wedding. Our friends Cassie and John got married this weekend, and we mentioned this because they have been friends for a long time, and they have helped us out through the store. And
they've been great friends to the store.
You guys probably know them if you ever
you've
come
been
in.
around
You've been around
enough,
to see them. And so it was very exciting to officiate their wedding, and it was really a fun wedding at Tucker Alley, and we just want to wish them congratulations.
Congratulations, John and Cassie.
On a long and happy life together.
Yay!
And lots of beer.
Lots of beer and happy lives. So today's episode is not about beer. Well, it's a little bit about beer. I mean, it's like 2 parts about beer and 1 part not about beer.
It's about a little beer. Actually, Toby's segment is about a little beer.
It's about a little beer. It's about a small batch of beer. But on today's episode...
Spit it out, Amport. On today's episode, we mix things up a little bit and talk with our good friend and expert sake brewer, Shinobu Kato, about the process of sake brewing and his new business, Kato Sake Works, that will be opening in Bushwick, Brooklyn, hopefully by the end of this year.
We've known Shinobu for a long time now. It's been like 2 years, something
Seems
like that.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And he's been coming around with his sake to all of the swaps. I think most of the brewminaries probably know who I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
If they don't know his name, he's the guy with the sake. And it's really, really great. It's really great stuff. And I was really psyched to get him to sit down between starting a business and traveling around the world. He's been very, very busy. So we get to talk to him today. And we've got a couple other segments today as well. We're
going to focus a little bit on our employees, who are a big part of the community here at Bitter Esters. Mm-hmm. And one of them is our Toby, who's been working here for about 6 months.
Did you just say Katobi?
Katobi.
Katobi.
He's Shinobu Katobi. No, his name is Toby. You guys know Toby. He's an excellent brewer. He's actually worked pro for a little bit. He works here now, and he has a very interesting thing that he does that we talked to him about. I don't know if we want to spoil it.
I'm going to spoil it. He brews 1 bottle batches, which I get a little down on him for, but it's really a neat concept. And he talks all about that and why he does that and what he gets out of it. It's pretty neat.
The cool thing about it is that he's very into it.
He is super into it. And they're all grain. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
He's a great guy, too. So it's an interesting interview.
All right.
And then also we have John Hagen, our very own John Hagen, with his Style Corner. Is that what we call it?
Part number 2, Style Corner, Barley Wine.
Barley Wine.
Looking forward to that.
Perfect for this time of year and the holly jolly Christmas.
Oh, I could sing Christmas carols from now until January, but they don't let me.
I won't let you. So there's not a lot of things coming up in the coming weeks, but
The day this comes out. Today is Brew for a Cure. Saturday, November 2nd from 1 to 5 p.m. at The Well.
Bushwick.
272 Marisol Street, Brooklyn, New York.
We've talked about this before. This is a great charity event. It is for St. Jude's Children's Hospital, which
Great
provides free care for children with cancer and other diseases, I believe. So they do it every year. It's always a lot of fun. Becca's going to be representing us there, so go by and say hello to Becca.
And drink a lot of beer.
Drink a lot of beer for a good cause. So as we were saying before, one of our newer employees, Toby, has an interesting project that he does, and that is make one bottle batches at a time of beer. It's really kind of a fun thing because they're very unique and very gone once you open the damn thing and drink it. And his beers really come out great, so I felt that we should talk to him about it. And plus, you all get to hear a little bit more about who Toby is.
Who are you, Toby?
I don't know. I'm a brewer. I work here at Bitter Esters.
Start with your name, Toby.
My name is Toby. I thought you made that clear when you asked me the question.
So where do you work?
I work at this little shop called Bitter Esters.
What's your official title?
I am the beer czar.
Why do we call you the beer czar, Toby?
Because it strikes fear into the hearts of bacteria.
It does.
Yeah, I don't feel particularly great about the monarchist tones to it, but
the Imperial Russian overtones.
Yeah. Not a fan.
Do you want to be democratically elected beer person?
Yeah, I mean that's the dream, right? You want public approval of the yeast, approval of the beer,
right?
But President Pellicle doesn't have quite the same ring to it. So
we did ask the yeast who we wanted to work downstairs, and it was close.
Overwhelmingly, Toby.
Between you and Lactobacillus, they picked you.
He's a sour guy, but it's nice to have the hundreds of trillions of votes of confidence.
So it was my idea to have Toby on here for one of two reasons.
I was adamantly against the idea.
So Toby has been working here. How long have you been working here?
Since April. It's about 6 months.
About 6 months now. And when we had the idea for the podcast, I said, well, we have some interesting people working here. I think we should do a little bit of focus on the employees.
Interesting for so many reasons.
Interesting. And Toby does something interesting besides everything else he does that's interesting. And that's what we're going to talk to you about. And what is it we're going to talk to you about, Beer Czar?
It is one bottle brewing.
What? One bottle brewing?
1 bottle brewing, 12 ounces at a time.
That's craziness.
I hear that a lot from you guys.
Why brew 1 bottle batches, Toby?
Creativity. I brew typically 5 gallons at a time at home. I know a lot of home brewers do 3 gallons. Some people do 1 gallon. And, obviously the smaller you go, the less risk you have in brewing something not great. I know I've gotten stuck with 5 gallons of stuff where, it's not necessarily bad, but a few pints in, you're like, this was fun, but I need something else on tap. And it takes a while. So 1 bottle gives you the flexibility to make something. If it's great, and you can expand on it. And if it sucks, that's the end of it.
Seems like a lot of work for 12 ounces.
It's not. So I've taken a little bit of inspiration in my later brews from the Brewlosophy short and shoddy method. So my process now is down to about an hour, not including fermentation, obviously. And that hour is probably 5 to 10 minutes of actual hands-on work.
Describe that hour-long process.
Yeah, so the quick process is this. I heat up my strike water to the appropriate temperature. I've got 3 to 5 ounces of grain in a grain bag, goes into a 32-ounce mason jar. Top that off with strike water, close the jar, give it a few shakes, and it sits and mashes for about 30 minutes. 30 minutes later, pull the muslin bag out, get all the grains out of there, pour it onto a saucepan on my stove, boil it for 15 minutes with 0.01 to 0.06 ounces of hops. I have eliminated the chill. It's a very precise.
I'm thinking about the poor scale.
Gram scales definitely come in handy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So after the boil, flame out. I used to do an ice bath, but what I do now is I pour the hot wort directly back into a pint mason jar. I seal that up and I throw it in my fridge, and that's my chill. So about an hour and a half, 2 hours later, it's down to fermentation temp. I open it up. I put in an eighth of a teaspoon of yeast maybe, which is probably still a gross overpitch. I use the fermentation lids that we have. They're typically for pickles. They just have, it's a dry airlock. So there's like a little relief at the top.
The little nipple things.
Yeah. And I leave it in the corner of my kitchen for about a week. Bottling day comes around, I funnel it into a 12-ounce beer bottle, top it off with a little water to hit the appropriate volume for carbonation, and beer. That's it.
It's brew in a bag.
It is brew in a bag.
No sparge.
No. I had tried initially. I got really ahead of myself before doing my first batch. I had bought a small French press from IKEA and was going to use that as a mash tun. And I don't know if you've ever tried to French press, let's say espresso grind, where you have very fine grind. If you can't get, if that liquid won't pass through the filter, what ends up happening is with enough pressure, it finds a break on the edge, on the seam, and your liquid just splashes everywhere.
Cool.
So my first batch was 12 ounces, and I probably got 4 ounces all over my kitchen.
You lost 30% of your beer.
Exactly, which is not tremendously efficient. But it came out great. The first one I did was based on a long-standing stout recipe that I've been making for about 8 years now. So I wanted to do something tried and true. And actually, it came out probably as close to the first time that I remember it as possible. Obviously, like I think a lot of, taste and perception is based on, the experience, not just the actual flavor and actual aroma, but how you feel in that moment. And so I think that may have played into it, but I just really enjoyed it and it inspired me to keep on going with it.
Describe some of your successes and some of your failures.
Yeah. Okay. So biggest success, I think, I did a beer called, can I curse on the podcast?
You can curse.
Fuck no.
Okay. It's called Rye the Fuck Not. It's 100% rye. It used rye malt, flaked rye, chocolate rye, and caramel rye. And that came out beautifully. Lots of good floral notes. It had like a nice spice to it. Kind of everything you'd expect from rye. Very full body, which was not ideal, let's say 3 months ago when I made it, but kind of inspired me to do something similar for the winter now that it's stout season. So that was, I think, probably my best success. We also did a similar brew I called Oat Milk, which was 100% oats with a little bit of lactose.
Malted oats?
Malted oats, flaked oats. I guess that would be it. I don't know if we have any other oats.
Golden Naked oats?
There we go. Malted, flaked, and golden naked. So it was that plus a little bit of lactose. And it came out as this incredibly like floral sweet brew. And it wasn't like a lactose sweet. It was like almost a fruit sweetness.
It was like an oat milk sweetness.
Yeah.
I get to try these beers, by the way. And you made 3 different ones in that time, right? 3?
Yeah. So the 4 that you had tried, one was the
4.
initial batch. Yeah. One was the initial batch. And the other 3 included a new grain that we have in, which is Batavia biscuit oats, which adds a very distinct biscuity, gristy kind of flavor. Of the 4 people who had tried those 4 bottles, I got very different reviews, but I think I've got something kind of figured out to do a big oat wine this winter, which is part of the plan for why I brewed 4 batches of that.
How many batches have you made altogether so far?
Great question. I don't know. Probably about 12 to 15. Part of my embracing of this one bottle brew is the ephemerality of it. And so I've done absolutely nothing to keep records. It's very much, I brew it, I drink it, I share it with people, which is a great part of the experience. And then, and that's it. It's gone like into the ether.
Have you scaled any of them up yet?
Not yet. Obviously I've taken a little bit of inspiration from them to try to build up. Actually the oat batch that I had done with Batavia biscuit oats, was kind of a proof of concept. And I now have a 5-gallon batch at home of my, the stout that I mentioned before, with 2 pounds added of Batavia biscuit oats, which gives it great body and like a nice, like a nice grainy flavor that really complements the stout.
And those Batavia biscuit oats are available at bitteresters.com.
Maybe I would be less adverse to having Toby on if I got to try more of the beers.
Yeah, that's what it is. I got to try the beers.
That's definitely what it is. Yeah, maybe if you made 2 bottles.
Well, that's my project. That's not. What if you made 5 gallons?
Oh yeah, there we go. And then shared it with us.
That's not a bad idea.
No, so when you open that one, Toby's like, "Oh, you want to try my latest one bottle batch?" And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't even think we should open this. It should just never be opened. But it's because it's like the last bottle, but it's also the first bottle.
I definitely get that too. I've had some where you finish the bottle and the first thought that crosses your mind is, man, I'll never taste that again.
Right. And the ones I've had have been very good. I mean, obviously the oat ones were experimental, and it might have been more like what beer was like in Middle Ages time because they used a lot more oats. But, I think I've had a pale ale from you, a lager. You've done a lager, right?
Yeah, we had the
stout. I've had the stout.
Yeah, the raw ale, I think, as well. The Laurel hopped raw ale.
Raw ale. So explain that.
Raw. Not like no boil.
No boil, yeah. So explain that.
Oh, yeah. So process was basically the same. Steep my grains, mashed at about 150, and then pulled out the grain bag and just pitched them yeast. That one was not boiled at all.
When did you add the hops?
Right after the grain bag came out. So it was dry hopped essentially. By the time the hops went in, it was definitely well below the temperature for conversion, for alpha acid conversion.
Did I have that one?
Yeah, I think you did. That one came out. You seem to like it. Okay. I mean, it was a raw ale, so there's a bit of context there, but it was tart, it was sour. I wasn't expecting it to come out that way, having never brewed a raw ale myself. But you seem to think that it was like what was definitely going to happen.
So many of these single bottles I've had, it's hard to. I'm not taking notes either.
Yeah, no.
So, but I just think that the concept's pretty amazing. Doug and I had this idea once before to do it as a little kit for people as a kind of a
We
goof.
had the idea to do it as a joke.
As a joke, yeah.
Yes. However,
you ain't kidding.
This Christmas, available at Bitter and Esters, 1-bottle kits.
Really?
Well, we have fucking mason jars. Like, what else do you need?
Right. Okay. Well, we should do. I mean, we haven't talked about it before, but
I'm announcing it now, John.
Where'd you learn about it, John? During the recording of the podcast. Yeah. Right. 1-bottle kits.
All right. I'm happy to share my trade secrets.
Great. They're going to be $50 a piece for the 1-bottle kit. No, just kidding.
Well, it's limited edition. That's the price of scarcity.
The Tobias Benjamin's 1-bottle kits.
President Pellicle. 1-bottle kit.
Oh, I like that better, yeah.
That does
have a nice ring to it.
What else?
So how long have you been brewing, Toby?
About 8 years.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice. And you've brewed professionally?
Yep. I used to work over at a brewery down here in Flatbush. Unfortunately, no longer there anymore, but got a little while to head things up over there. Helped out at Hagen Lantern for a couple of brews. And now we've got Daleview opening up in Lefferts Gardens, also on Nostrand Avenue. I've had the pleasure to go and help out with the brew over there also.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that either.
What was the name of that brewery? The one that you worked at first?
Island to Island.
And then we picked you up.
Yes. Yeah.
So there we go. That's Toby, everybody.
Thank you so much, Toby.
Thank you guys
Toby,
for having
be
me
on here and look for those 1-bottle kits.
I'm glad you badgered me into doing this. This was fun.
So it might sound crazy to make 1 bottle of beer at a time, but we will be offering 1-bottle kits. So, you might have that brewer in your life that just doesn't think they can make beer. It's a quick process. They can make the 1 bottle, and then they'll make 1 gallon, then they'll make 2.5 gallons, and they'll make 5 gallons, and they'll make 5 barrels, and they'll make 50 barrels. Next thing you know, they're going to be bought out by AB InBev, and they're going to have this giant conglomerate, and people are going to be like really down on them, saying,
like, why'd you get them started
I knew
in
you
beer,
when you were
asshole.
1 bottle, man. I knew you when you were 1 bottle, and now you're like bought out by AB InBev. So we will have 1-bottle kits for sale this year. Toby's actually working on that. So
stop by for Christmas.
And I don't normally drink coffee, just so you know.
Next, we've got John Hagen talking to us about barley wines. I don't think he needs any more of an introduction than he's going to give himself.
That's very true.
My name is Jonathan Hagen, and I'm the resident certified Cicerone at Bitter and Esters, and I'm here to talk at you about beer styles. You'll hear my sonorous timbre inside your head, giving you some history on a specific style and how you might want to brew that style at home. Today, we're going to talk about barley wines, a style that didn't really exist in its current form until the latter half of the 20th century. See also Belgian Golden Strong Ale. Once you start digging into the history of some styles, you'll find that their origins sometimes rest on some strange assumptions. English IPA. That being said, barley wine as a beer, in its current incarnation, is one of my favorite styles that you should definitely make and then not drink for at least a year or more. So what exactly is a barley wine? Before I bring on the historical pedantry and lose your interest completely, let's just say that the modern idea of a barley wine is a high alcohol, between 9 and 15% ABV, generously hopped ale that can range in color from pale to brown, depending on the recipe. Simple, right? No, not really. If we're going to go the originalist route and only determine the style by its historical antecedents, then a barley wine is most like a British old ale, which is really just a high alcohol beer that was intended for keeping, that is, storing, because the alcohol and hopping levels made them slightly more resistant to souring bacteria like lactobacillus. In fact, old ale and barley wine were mostly used interchangeably until the 1950s, when British brewers started to designate their high alcohol pale ales as barley wines. To further confuse things, the American take on barley wines are often more alcoholic, hoppier, and sometimes barrel-aged. At least the history of American barley wines can be easily traced to Anchor Brewing's Old Foghorn barley wine, which debuted in 1976 and was followed by Sierra Nevada's Bigfoot barley wine in 1983. Fun fact, Anchor Brewing and Sierra Nevada are the progenitors of most of your favorite American takes on historically British styles. Anchor's version is definitely more British, that is, subdued, less hoppy, than Sierra Nevada's bolder, hoppier take, but they're both delicious. All that said, what does a barley wine taste like, and why should you care? Think of it as a double or triple IPA that focuses on the malt flavors, not the hops. Because these are such high alcohol beers, they are very good candidates for long-term aging. That aging can really transform these beers from bitter, over-hopped monsters into smooth, warming, port or sherry-like beers. Rich with caramel, dark fruit, and toffee flavors, barley wines are typically best when served a little warm, above 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and in a snifter to enhance their aromas. Barrel-aged versions add oak and vanilla to the mix, adding further complexity without overpowering the malt flavors. Why are barley wines so revered in the darker corners of the beer world? Why has the phrase barley wine is life become a thing? Barley wines are a great example of coaxing flavor and complexity out of relatively simple ingredients, malt, hops, yeast, without resorting to adjuncts or gimmicks, like some unnamed pastry stouts. So, if you want to try your hand to barley wine, choose whether you want a pale or dark version and go from there. For a pale version, aim for roughly 10% alcohol by volume, and shoot for an IBU of 50 or above with a clean bittering hop like Warrior or Magnum. Stick with an English malt like Maris Otter, and keep your caramel malt additions to less than 5% of the total grain bill. Choose a British yeast like Omega's British 8 or Yeast's London ESB, and make sure you pitch a healthy amount of yeast because your starting gravity will be very high. For a darker version, bump up your caramel malts to 7.5% and consider including a small portion of lightly roasted malts like pale chocolate or debittered black for a little color and a hint of roast character. Once fermentation is complete, age at least 3 to 6 months in the bottle and age them as long as you want after that. If you want to get fancy, make a small batch every year and age them for a few years and do a vertical tasting of each year. You'll see how much they change over time and discover why people love them so much. If you're looking for a recipe, we'd recommend The Innkeeper on our website. It leans more English than American and is a great place to start. Lastly, here's a primer on how to say barley wine, courtesy of my child.
Barley wine.
That's it for me, folks. Barley wine is life.
So thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Hagen.
And you guys should start making those barley wines now. Have them ready for the holidays.
So you can drink them next Christmas.
Holidays. Yeah, those are the holidays I'm talking about.
Or at least Easter. Yeah,
Yeah.
or whatever the springtime holiday solstice party that we're holding. So our store has a lot of people who are interested in making beer as a hobby. We've got, hundreds and hundreds of customers who come in here and never talk about opening a brewery. I mean, some of them fantasize about it, but it's a hobby. They're accountants. They're, producers. They do their thing. And then you get, someone like Shinobu Kato, who's up next on our podcast, who comes in and just kind of has like this vision and this aura about him that you just know is very serious and very different from everything else you've seen.
You mean, and we have 3, 4, 5 other people who have.
Oh, we have lots of people that come in here who have that attitude. I mean, a lot of them have gone on to start breweries,
yeah.
But none of them have gone on to start a sake brewery here in Brooklyn.
No, none of them have. And it's really exciting. I mean, it's kind of it's almost a historical thing. I mean, there is another sake brewery,
Brooklyn Cora, down in Industry City,
and that's awesome. And
totally
Shinobu
cool.
talks about them a little bit. That's great. But Shinobu is almost going the home brewer becomes.
Yeah, he's scaling up from a homebrew setup And now he's doing 55-gallon batches, which is just barely, a barrel and a half of beer.
Right.
I don't know how you measure sake. How do you measure sake? Is it in barrels?
Usually I do it by the bottle.
We should have. I do it by that.
I say, how many bottles of sake have you had?
This is a 3-bottle hangover.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's definitely, if not the first historic opening, it's definitely a big milestone.
It's a big milestone. And we're looking very much forward to him opening up his sake brewery. And let's talk to Shinobu.
Okay, so my name is Shinobu Kato. I'm Japanese and born and grew up in Tokyo. So I moved to the U.S. 15 years ago or so. At that time I was not brewing anything, or I didn't even think about starting a sake business.
Okay.
Yeah, now I have a startup sake brewery, a small brewery with a tap room in Bushwick in Brooklyn. Yeah, not open yet, but working on it. So hopefully by the end of the year, we have some announcement.
That's cool.
Where in Bushwick?
Near Roberta's Pizza.
Oh, that's good.
Between Roberta's Pizza and KCBC.
That's a good walk.
That's a great walk, actually.
I'm not sure which direction I would go. Probably should start at Roberta's. And then go have some sake, right? And then end the night at KCBC.
Yep.
That'd be the responsible thing to do.
Let's go now.
So you didn't come right to Brooklyn, right? You lived on the West Coast for a long time.
Well, I lived in Nashville, Tennessee for 10 years.
Okay.
So after the grad school, I got a job in Nashville. That was a corporate job and completely different from this industry. So I was doing IT work for automotive. Started my work at the factory or something like that. Then at some point I started doing home brew. So were you homebrewing beer? Sake.
You started with sake.
I never brewed beer.
You'll be like, this is too easy.
No. It still kind of, scares me to brew beer.
Really?
Yes. But anyway, so I started home brew.
We have to have Shinobu over to brew on the system.
We do.
Okay.
You won't be scared anymore.
Yeah. So 6 years ago or so, I started home brew sake. At my kitchen. So, all my friends started brewing beer, and then I was in craft beer. At that time, Nashville was booming with, new breweries everywhere, right? So I was, part of that wave, and then I wanted to do something. But, I've been complaining that there's no good sake to serve at my party. The typical sake that you can get at the liquor store or, sushi restaurant. That's the type of sake I normally use for cooking. And
really?
Yeah. And I didn't want to serve those type of sake to my friends. Although there are a couple of liquor stores, they carry good sake, premium sake imported from Japan, but those are like 3 times overpriced.
I was going to say,
then, way above my party budget. Right. Yeah. So normally I ended up serving, Japanese home cooking food plus craft beer, IPA, wine, something like that. And then that's a shame. The same thing happened when I go to a sushi restaurant, right? They have a good deal these days that you don't have to, worry too much about the budget to go to a sushi restaurant anymore. But when it comes to sake, they either have happy hour hot sake, no bland sake, only tastes like rubbing alcohol.
Hot rubbing alcohol.
Or expensive import that they are good, but not that good, right? So I normally order beer or wine, and then that's a shame too.
Let me just digress a little bit on this. How's the sushi in the United States compared to Tokyo?
Good. I think it's more expensive here, but I understand that it's an ingredient thing, and then there's a reason for the price. Right? Not like ramen. Ramen is crazy. That's overpriced for nothing. But anyway, that's a different,
It's a different podcast, I think.
Keep that in mind, kids. The ramen is overpriced for nothing.
So you were disappointed in your choices. You're staring at your friends who are making these IPAs, and you decide, I'm gonna make the best sake anybody's ever drunk.
Yeah, well, I didn't think I'm going to make the best sake, but I wanted to try.
Okay.
You've never made sake before?
No.
Okay.
And then it's crazy, but it's illegal in Japan. So there's no home brewing market at all. So it was a little bit challenge to start because there's not good information. Well, there are a couple of, or handful of American people who tried making sake. So there were like recipes online and things. So I started from there, but eventually ended up going to the like industrial academic paper published by a Japanese Brewers Society or something like that. The challenge was they are talking about the commercial size, and then that's like 1,000 times bigger than my 5-gallon kitchen batch, right? So how to apply that back to the scale was different and difficult. But anyway, my first batch went well, and I invited all my friends to the pressing party, and we pressed the batch together, and then it was good. It was way much better than the hot rubbing alcohol sake. Right, and then everybody was happy. Yeah, we finished the batch that night, and then the party went crazy. Of course, yeah. But anyway, I was happy, and then I liked what I did, so I continued up to the point that one of my friends came to me that, hey, all the sake that I had before was bad, and then I didn't like sake until I got your sake, and then now I like sake. Can I buy a bottle? I have a friend. I'm going to my grandparents' Thanksgiving dinner. I'd like to bring your sake to there. And she was not the last person to, approach me in that way. And then I was like, okay, I don't have enough sake to sell. Oh, by the way, it's illegal, right? But that's when I started thinking that, hey, I've been complaining about this problem for a long time. I might have a solution for that problem. So that's when I started thinking about this more seriously.
How long ago was this?
3-4 years ago.
That's it?
Yeah.
You've been making sake for 3 or 4 years.
I've been making sake for like 6 years.
6
so
years.
it took some time
it was
for
3
me
years
to.
later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was 3 years before. 3 years before it was good enough that people were buying it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then also at that
that
time I had a stable corporate job, so it was a kind of big change for me to quit that job and then go to the life
of crime.
Yeah.
Just bootleg.
Yeah.
So I want to actually back up a little bit. You mentioned pressing, having a pressing party. That was one of the first like kind of great moments you've had homebrewing. Can you talk a little bit about the sake making process?
Okay.
Because I know when we first met you, we visited your establishment and I had one of the best sake tours.
Huh.
Better than most brewery tours. I learned so much. It was fascinating. So don't give us the 2-hour tour, but what's the process and how do you get into it?
I also went home to bed right after we...
Oh, yeah. We both went home and took a nap.
We
were a little...
Yeah, we started drinking what time was that?
I think it started at like 9 or 10. Yeah, it was early.
Welcome to our lives.
2 hours later, we know a lot about sake and the workday is done.
Yeah. So starting from ingredients, we have 4 key ingredients. Rice instead of your barley. So rice is our source of starch. Water, yeast, the same. And then the last thing is called koji. Now people are crazy about koji, but koji is a kind of white fluffy mold that grows on rice. And what koji does is exactly the same as your malt does. So it is a source of enzymes to break down the starch in barley to sugar, or in our case, the starch in rice to sugar.
Right.
So very, very similar to your beer making process. So 4 key ingredients. And then fermentation is a little bit different because we do not do a saccharification before fermentation, but we do both at the same time in the same tank. So we decided to put everything in the same tank and then, hope for good sake to come up later. Yeah.
I think there's more than hope. I mean, I saw your setup. It had temperature regulators and chilling coils, and there was a lot going on.
Yeah, and the temperature is the biggest, variables because that's the only few things that we can control. There's a saccharification and alcohol fermentation happening in the same environment.
Right.
So whatever the dials you change impacts both sides, right?
So you're basically doing the mash and the fermentation at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. And then at the end of the fermentation takes, that process takes 4 to 6 weeks in a very cold environment. So like your lager temperature, below 50. Okay. And that's a very sluggish fermentation, but that sluggish fermentation gives sake a very beautiful aromas and then esters. So big difference between the rubbing alcohol cheap sake and craft sake is that duration.
The speed.
If you dial up the temperature, you can get the fermentation quickly in like a week or two, but you don't get good sake.
Okay. So during the several week process, you're not just letting it alone. You're actually adding in different charges of rice and koji mixture
so
to build it up, right?
Yeah, building is a little bit different than beer making. So we start from a very small starter, like 7% of the total grain bill with the same ratio basically, and then grow that for the yeast to properly propagate, and then bring that to a bigger tank and slowly add more ingredients over 3 days course of time. So the day one you add 20%, day two you add 40%, and the day three you add the remainder or something like that. And then that's, I think, what was a traditional way to have a safer environment, because we are doing open fermentation and our mash is vulnerable to wild yeast or other bacteria. Well, if you grow slowly, you can assure that the dominant microbe is our yeast.
Right. Instead of having a whole bunch of sugar right away and throwing some yeast on it.
Exactly.
Wow.
That's so it's both safety and flavor.
Oh, so after you're done doing the fermentation process, what's the next step?
So because we don't do a mashing first, our mash is very thick congee, like rice soup, right? So at the end of the fermentation, we have to press. So pressing is more like a filtration, kind of same thing, but we use different techniques to do initial pressing. It's more like a fruit press for cider making or wine making, right? And then we separate the liquid from the solid. The liquid becomes sake. Solid becomes sake kasu, or your spent grain. And then after that, once we have a sake, we can do either further filtration, pasteurization, those kind of final.
But it's ready to drink at that point? Does it need to age at all?
Yeah, we normally don't age. Some breweries age like a couple of months, but aging sake is not a thing. Or at least we have not, nobody has.
It's not like part of the whole thing. And you don't carbonate sake ever. Right?
Well, I've tried, right? One time you gave me CO2, so I tried, and it was good. So I want to try that again. Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Cool. It sounds easy.
It sounds very easy. Yeah. Actually, we should just
be making.
We should be making it right now.
Yeah.
So if somebody does want to go out there in the world and make a 5-gallon batch of sake because they're inspired by you or whatever, what kind of advice can you give them about getting started? What's the biggest pitfall that they're going to run into? What's the biggest problem they're going to have?
Well, I think. I'm thinking. Not many people know what the proper taste of sake. So when I taste somebody's homebrew sake, I always pick up off flavors, but they don't realize that's off flavor. Right. So that's a challenge. So first thing I'd say, is drink more sake as much as you can, so that you know that what's a right sake.
Yay! First step. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, but one of the Bluminelli members came to my space a year ago or so, and then he built a 5-gallon batch by himself, Roman.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
Of course, Roman.
Yeah, and then that was beautiful.
You gave us all some koji.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the swaps.
Yes. Making koji might be a challenge, but now you can buy koji online. So.
And do you keep the koji going? Like you have to keep feeding that koji like a sourdough starter in order for it to stay alive?
No, koji is more like your malt. So once it's done, it's done.
Oh, you have to get more.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then, we are not interested in the mold itself, but we are more interested in the enzymes that mold produce. So at the end of your malting process, when maltster makes malt, they kill the sprout, right? Yeah, the same thing. For us, after the koji making, we are not interested in koji mold itself.
But would you take some of the koji that during the koji making and put it aside to make more sake next time?
I start with a fresh spore.
You do? Okay.
Yeah. So every time and then koji making is not as time consuming than malt making. So it only like 2 days process. And then it's like, like making yogurt or something like that, humid, warm environment and then culture mold.
But I remember you saying it's a process that you have to be there for like 48 hours. You can't.
It requires more close attention than
yeah. Are you still planning on like building a cot and a bunk bed into
I do have a cot already. Yes.
What are you paying attention to during this process?
Like temperature and humidity, but you don't want koji to grow too fast, but you don't want koji to grow too slow. So you need to, balance that.
Isn't there an app for that?
I'm building something by myself.
You did tell me a story one time, and I tell people this story, but I'm not sure if I get it completely straight, that there was a Japanese man who came to America around the turn of the century, around the 1800s, who brought koji and said to the whiskey makers, like, you don't need them all.
Yeah. I think he went to Kentucky for the bourbon makers and then told them, like, hey, koji making is more efficient than malt making. Instead of 7 days malt making, koji is 2 days. And then also the enzyme per weight is more than malt. So why don't you use koji instead of malt? And he tried to start that business while he set up a lab or office or something there. And one time, he had a strong opposition from the Maltster Union.
I bet he did.
Yeah. And one time that office got burned down.
Wow.
Nobody knows what happened.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. But we know that they are not using koji today.
Yeah, has anyone else tried that? I mean, using koji
Have you heard of any
raw
experiments
barley?
like that?
That would be pretty cool.
I don't know, but nowadays many breweries, craft breweries are very much interested in the potential of koji. So when I speak with brewers, they are like, okay, can I do this? Can I do that? Right? So I know a couple of people kind of experimenting.
That's great.
Yeah. I had a visitor on Sunday, and he works for a big, alcohol conglomerate, and he does have a pilot facility. And he asked me, hey, what do I need what kind of information do I need to build my own koji chamber? So they are very much interested in making their own koji.
I wonder how the beer would taste.
And you said, write me a check.
Right.
And I'm happy to answer that question for you.
Or listen to see what you can brew.
See what you can brew.
That's true.
We won't ask that question.
Yes,
We'll keep that one a secret.
Yep.
Private. What's the word I'm looking for? Proprietary information.
This just goes to show you what the home brewers really and craft beer people are changing technology for things that, a lot of times people only do things because they've been doing them for the past 200 years.
Yeah.
And
then,
yeah.
And then actually it's not a
way.
secret information because it's quite open in Japanese brewers community.
Joking. Yeah.
Japanese brewers community is controlled by government. Yeah. And the government does all the research and then publish papers and then everything. So, like koji making seems quite, seclusive and then secret because we don't know those informations. But if you Google in Japanese, you can find plenty of information. So nothing is secret.
Okay.
I have no idea how to Google in Japanese, just so you know.
Secret enough for me.
Yeah, right.
No, this is eye-opening. Have you given your sake to like sake makers in Japan,
Yes.
sake drinkers?
Yes.
How does it compare? How does it hold up? What's the reception?
My sake tends to be more Americanized, I'd say. And then that was the intention because your food is very different from the typical Japanese food. And, your beverage grows with your food, right?
Right.
Yeah. So typical Japanese sake, the taste profile is more geared towards paired with like a very plain Japanese food like sushi, sashimi, or other stuff. Well, your food is loud, right? Marinara sauce, wings, or mac and cheese with bacon, something like that. So,
It's loud food, yeah.
Yeah. And then typical sake is a little too delicate and then a little too sweet to pair with typical American food. So I dial up a little bit of acidity and then also more rice character to stand out to whatever you eat with my sake.
So it's like turning the IPA up to 11. You're doing that for sake.
Yeah,
more or
exactly.
less. Okay.
Right,
Yeah.
this is an English style. Really? I've never noticed.
Yeah, and then in Japan also, there are a couple of sake breweries trying to do something like that too. Yeah, now the big trend is a sour. It's not as sour as your sour beer, but typical sake profile is kind of going towards more sour side.
Interesting.
More acidic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You started that. You shouldn't have let anyone try any of it.
So I'm very much looking forward to getting a bottle and sitting down with some bacon, mac and cheese,
Yeah.
and making
Yeah.
that afternoon happen.
Yeah. Or we can order pizza from Roberta's.
We could
Pizza from
we could-
Roberta's.
Pizza from Roberta's
With the sake, which would work great. And then
I'll
go
make
to
some mac and
KCBC.
cheese.
Yep.
Oh,
Right.
and KCBC.
And KCBC, yeah. So tell us a little bit more about what you're doing now as far as what's the next step with you.
Kato Sake Works is the name of the brewery, KATL. So please follow, on Instagram or Facebook or whatever.
You just got like 2 new followers.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
me and
Me and John.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're
That
welcome.
probably doubles the count. Yep. So we're waiting for the license, and then also the tanks are being fabricated in West Coast right now. So hopefully we get the shipment like in a couple of weeks. Still working for the taproom furniture. We will have a very small taproom, but want to have our customers to experience the sake in a very casual setting. So my goal is to make sake culture more like a beer culture. So very casual, laid back, or you can geek out about beer if you want, but you don't have to. And then just come by and then drink and then have fun time, right?
Is it going to be just sake, or are you going to have beer as well?
If I can find a New York State labeled beer that I can sell at the brewery, yes.
Okay.
There's
And
like a license.
You're going to sell
invitation.
bottles from the brewery, straight
Yes.
from the brewery.
Yes.
And how big is it? How big as far as gallons?
Production, yeah.
Production.
We do have 300 liters fermenter. Or
300 hectoliters?
No. 300 just liters.
300 liters. Oh, okay.
So it's relatively small.
Is that 60 gallons, roughly?
Yeah,
Yeah.
55 gallons.
55,
or something,
yeah,
something
okay.
like that. Yeah, and then size-wise, probably that's maybe a little bit smaller than your shop. So it's quite small. That's
You're going to be busy.
I think you'll be busy. Yeah, especially between Roberta's and that neighborhood.
Yeah,
It's
my
great.
goal is to go to the real, brewery side. So that's the next goal that I have. But you need to start from somewhere.
So this is like the pilot. Okay.
I know you said it before, but when do you think you're going to open?
Before the end of the year,
Yeah?
yeah,
Great.
that's my goal.
Before the end of 2019.
2019.
This year.
Okay.
Yes.
Just making
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
Just making
Yeah,
sure.
but I've been saying that before the end of October and before the end of November. So now I'm saying that before the end of the
So
year.
January 1st, you
Yep.
get a knock on the door.
Yeah.
January 2nd, maybe.
And this is going to be your only job, or are you still working too?
This is my only job.
All
yeah,
right.
It's
Wow,
my full-time
congratulations.
Gig. Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
And you know what that means to me? It means that your wife has a good job. Am I right?
I think you're right.
Yeah, there you go.
And she's quite supportive. Yes.
Any other questions, John?
No, is there anything else you want to talk about on this? This has been really fascinating.
Thank you very much. I've been complaining about lack of good accessible sake in the US, and then I'm hoping that my sake fill that gap. Now you have a cheap budget sake that's like your college drink, right? You talked about the King Cobra in your previous episode, but the typical sake experience for Americans is, hey, I drank King Cobra and then I don't like sake, of course,
Right.
right? And then good sake is available, but it's a little bit intimidating, right? If you go to the good sushi bar, you have a list of good sake, but that's like, previously you only had a college drink, and then now you are in the fancy restaurant with a list of all the, Kolsch and Hells and then, all the things that you have no idea what you're ordering. And then bottle is more expensive than the typical beer price, right? So that's a big commitment for the people to try something new. So I want to give a chance for, for people that, hey, this is a good sake, good sake for you to try, and then you can graduate from your college sake. If you like, you can. There's more options that you can get as imported from Japan or some other breweries. But I'm here. I'm your neighbor. You can come to our brewery to see what's, how to make sake. What's the smell? What's the sound? Something like that. And then you can talk to me as a brewer. So I'd like you to try sake as a good drink.
So I think that's fascinating because I've always looked at sake. I mean, before meeting you, as more of a wine kind of style of both production and just kind of complexity and flavors and food pairings and stuff. And having learned from you and talked with you and all of this, and seeing the product more as beer, it really opened it up for me. And I mean, I still go out and I probably buy the sake that you use for cooking and try it, but it opened me up to just seeing what was on the shelf and going ahead and trying it and being more in tune with it as a beverage that I want to drink.
Yeah, and when people introduced sake to the U.S. market, initially I think they started labeling this as a rice wine, right? And then I think that was a good marketing move at that point. But back in Japan, we drink sake as a fancy wine. We drink sake more like, if you go to the local bar, you order sake, not the college sake, but good sake, without worrying too much about, great varieties or vintage or chateau. No, it's as casual as your beer culture.
How many varieties of sake will you be serving?
I think I'll start from 3. So 3 basic one, the clear one and the clear one called Junmai, and the cloudy one called the Nigori or hazy one, and then unpasteurized version called Nama. So those are the kind of 3 major products that I will start with. Well, if I have a capacity, I'll do one of crazy stuff that you enjoy, right? Collaboration with whatever or something like that.
Are we going to put lingonberries in one?
Yeah.
Do they fruit sake? Like I don't know that much about sake. So is it always kind of like the same process and just the quality ingredients and time?
Yeah, we dial, different processes and then different varieties, but it's like a German beer law that there's certain definition of what sake should be. Well, I'm not in Japan anymore, so I'm not bound to that restriction. So I'd like to try something different.
Double dry hopped sake?
Yeah, something like that. Right. Sake stout.
Sake stout, wow.
Ooh, very nice. Well, thank you so much, Shinobu.
Thank you,
It was a
Shinobu.
real pleasure to have you.
For having me.
It's always nice seeing you too, man.
Great.
Nice to see you.
One of the things about Shinobu that got me when we talked with him is how similar his startup story is to every major home brewer turned pro brewer in the 1970s and 1980s.
Brewer, but he makes sake.
Which
is
my goodness.
Also brewing.
Well, that's the interesting thing about it too. Everybody, at least, and I think we mentioned it in the interview, I thought it was more like wine until we went in and had an afternoon with Shinobu, and he just walked us through the whole process. I'm like, oh, this is just like lager brewing, except way more intense.
And a little more rice.
And a lot more rice, but and you get a different product out of it. I don't know. I thought it's a fascinating interview. In both the process that he goes through being similar to brewing and just his story. The guy moved to New York basically to start a brewery here in this city, a sake brewery here in this city. He's tied in with the local homebrew scene. He knows all of the brewminaries. He knows us, and he's done it before. He's started a business before, and that, kind of went away, but now he's on his own doing his thing, and it's going to be really, really cool. I'm looking forward to it. And
he's moving forward, and he's moving... Like he's got his shit together.
Nothing will stop him.
Yeah, nothing's going to stop him. And he's like the nicest guy. He really is. I mean, he's the kind of guy that when you see Shinobu, you're like, oh, I'm happy I saw Shinobu today.
Yeah, no, my day's better now.
My day's better because of that. And it's even more better when he brings sake with him, which
Less
happens quite often.
Less productive, but more better.
But more better. So, all right. Thank you, Shinobu, and thank you, everyone, for listening. Thanks, Toby. Thanks, John. And hope you guys enjoyed this nonsense.
As usual, I'm a giggling mess by the end of recording.
But, we are homebrew shop owners first, and podcasters
second,
fifth,
third,
probably, fourth. We hope you're enjoying the podcast. Please, if you have not... What do they call it? Subscribe?
Oh, subscribe. Please subscribe. It helps us prove that we're podcasting to my mom.
Yep.
Yeah, it helps justify my existence.
This is episode 9. We are trying to build an audience, and we're we're getting there.
You telling people about us is that. Is us building an audience.
Is us building an audience. Because we ain't going to spend no money on advertising.
We can't
for this.
afford that.
That's
Shit, we sell homebrew supplies for a living.
Did we mention that?
Anyway, thank
we
you
have
very
so
much,
fun
everybody.
here at Bitter Esters. See what you can brew.
Love you. Bye. Silver bells, it's Christmas time in the city. Bing, 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 ring-a-ling.
Ring-a-ling.
Hear them ring.
Hear them ring.
Soon it will be Christmas Day.